This is another Real Track production. Real Track, real.
I can see straight through the fuckery. Niggas know what's up with me. Yeah. Niggas know not to fuck with me. Real shit, only no fuckery. Thought this bitch wanna fuck on me, so she can go and tell that's that fuckery. If it ain't out there, that's the fuckery. I'm pulling back up with the fuckery. Yeah, bitch ain't no fucking me. You owe me, you ducking me, that is that fuckery. Yeah, stick on me ugly. Bitch ain't no touching me 30 for fuckery. Nah, that is that fuckery. That is that fuckery, fuckery. Yeah, that is that fuckery. That is that fuckery. Yeah, I can't let you play me for a pussy. You owe me to pay me or I am a pussy. Yeah, you probably feel off, huh? But I can't let you feel like you took it. Nope. Not the way you had a nigga looking. Need my money on my work when I call you play hooking. Yeah. You ain't keep it G. You ain't keep it G, nigga. All you did is try to hit me with the fuckery, nigga. Yeah. No, about to hand and feed niggas. No. I was just trying to feed niggas. Yeah. Cause I was just trying to eat, nigga. But I can't let you think I'm sweet, nigga. Okay. Yeah. I ain't type to live for beef, nigga. Nope. But I ain't looking just to please, nigga. Yeah. Got the pipe on my hip, got some pressure built up. I'm a motherfucker squeezing. Yeah. Now fuck making peace with you. I'll try and make some cheese with you. Yeah, man, I feel like we equal. Pull up, old raggedy vehicle. I'm shooting at whoever be with you. I wouldn't want to be with you. I'ma kill a nigga, smoke weed with you. Same nigga like to be a C with you. 30 round clip for your pussy ass. Then you get the picture. Thought this bitch wanna fuck on me. That ain't gon' happen though. Back in the trap and I'm stacking though. No time to chill with no ratchet hoe. Unless you gon' traffic though. No fuckery. Talk back, I smack her though. Tell that hoe pack the coat. Bitch, get your back and go get out the fucking door. Good afternoon. Let me hold on 1 second. I need to email this to myself. I jumped the gun a little early. How is everybody this afternoon? So I have been really, let me put this right here, really looking into the ground penetrating radar. Trying to find, excuse me. I know there's a lot going on, and this isn't to undercut anyone that's already currently live. I don't care about that. I'm here to appeal. Hello, everyone. I'm here to appeal to the analytical thinker, which, you know, in my mind, having a very limited understanding with zero education of ground penetrating radar, I really wanted to get to the bottom of it because I really want this to be the thing, right? I want this to be the thing because, again, like I don't want to see anyone fail. Does that make any sense? Let me turn this chat on over here. I don't want to see anyone fail, but I also, you know, things need to hold up to scrutiny, right? And I think that this is when you cherry pick out of all of this situation, what portion of it you want to adhere to, understanding that one person can be here for two different angles. One person could be here for the drama and the true crime. Then you have the people that are just here for the drama. And I think that
we can pick those people out, right? They got their hand raised. So thankfully we can identify them, right? Then you have the people that are just here for the true crime, for the Summer Wells. I'll say Summer Wells, because there's a lot of people that are here just for Summer Wells that maybe don't partake in any other sort of true crime, right? So I've taken, let me go here. So this is from the EPA. This is the Environmental Protection Agency, right? This is a federal agency, okay? And again, what we want to, in the chat, what we want to discuss, I don't want disparaging comments. What I want is an educated conversation about things pertaining to ground penetrating radar or to details we've heard about how it's going to be used. Okay. That is really the extent of it. We can talk about what other creators have spoken about GPR. You've not had an intuitive, insightful, in-depth look at what ground penetrating radar is or what it does. We have heard the very initial description of how this works is that it shakes the ground and that it shakes the bones, right? Now, I'm not going to read all of this. I'm going to read enough of it so that you understand the shapes. I've read all of this and way more. I'm not qualified to run a GPR device or instrument. What I am mildly qualified is to read it and give my interpretation of it. My interpretation with the addition of other visual aids. Okay. I hope that makes sense. So the basic concept, GPR is an electromagnetic geophysical method that transmits radio wave pulses at select center frequencies into the ground to study the subsurface. GPR capitalizes on the effects that the electrical properties of matter, example, dielectric permittivity, electrical conductivity, and magnetic permeability. Permeability is how the effectiveness of moving through a solid object, whether it be soil, metal, concrete, whatever. Okay. It's the effects have on electromagnetic EM energy propagation. If a wave pulse encounters a material interface or sufficiently different electromagnetic properties, some of the energy is reflected back while the remainder continues to propagate. Okay. The amplitude variations in wave velocity dependent travel time of the returning signal are measured and recorded by the GPR receiver. This information can be used to determine the depth to and geometry and magnitude of subsurface reflectors, right? What that's saying is that it can give you a general outline or a ping that something is down there, right? The result of the GPR survey resembles a cross-section which can depict the subsurface electrical structure and or reveal features of interest, right? I've shown you, if you watch the other one, you can sort of see the things that are in a radius, right? Let me pull up really quick. Okay. What you're going to understand about these readouts, okay, is that the rays, the electromagnetic pulse is sent in a conical or a cone shape frequency, right? Wider at the top and then going down to a V as it permeates deeper, right? So in this demonstration, what it would mean is that it's wide at the top, and as it travels down, now absolutely matters what sort of substrate or subsurface the pulse is running through. If it's running through clay or concrete, so on and so forth, the pulse diminishes, right? In certain substrates, whether it's compacted clay, wet clay, so on and so forth, the pulse can be ineffective, right? Let me pull this up really quick. Okay, so the soils of Beach Creek, no, Hawkins County. Okay, the soils, they are primarily loam and silt loam. The texture is mostly loam, fine sandy loam, and silt loam, offering a balanced mix of sand, silt, and clay. Right? Please. Generally well drained along slopes and uplands, though low-lying areas near the Beach Creek floodplain can feature silty alluvial deposits. Right? Now, let's go back over here. The amplitude variations and wave velocity dependent time travel of the returning signal are, we read all of that. Okay. The result of the GPR survey resembles a cross section which can depict the subsurface electrical structure and or reveal features of interest. The GPR method is ideal for subsurface investigations requiring an understanding of geological structure or the location of discrete objects. The possible configurations and applications of GPR are numerous. However, the most common deployment includes a transmitter. This is what the machine looks like. A transmitter and a receiver tied together at a fixed or common offset. With such configurations, data are gathered at or near walking speeds, which allows for the high-resolution imaging of near subsurface interfacial geometry. GPR is a popular method owing to its rapid data collection, high spatial resolutions, e.g. submeter, and because qualitative, semi-quantitative interpretations are possible in real-time collection, right? Now, this is the cross section, right? And what it's showing you, it's not shooting three rays, okay? It's not shooting three rays. What it's showing you on this plane is the extreme measure of the V, right? Through the different kind of soils, right? So in an unsaturated soil, the cone is much wider at the bottom. This here, from here to here. Once you get to the bottom, from here to here. It's two interesting things happening here. When you go through saturated soil, which means there's water in it, right? The V is more extreme from what would be the apex of the permeation. At the bottom of the permeation, right? The apex is the peak. This is the peak of the downward permeation. It's much wider. When you get down to bedrock, you can see that it's a little more extreme even yet. Okay. Now, what you're seeing here is a drainage pipe. You need to disregard these other two. This is the transmitted, red equals transmitted pulse. This is what the machine sends down. The blue is what the machine gathers as a readout, as a visual, okay? So if you're looking at transmitted pulse of the saturated soil, you're only looking at this line, disregarding this one and this one. The reflected or reflective pulse, you're only looking at this one, not these other two. So it goes down as soon as it hits, or it. So you can also imagine with a saturated soil, the pulse starts to dissolve as it goes through the soil, right? It lessens, it weakens, okay? So what you're seeing here is that when it's transmitted, when it hits an object, it goes directly back up. Now, why that's interesting is because, well, let's move over here. I have taken that the very same graphic, and what I've done is I have created something so you can understand, right? Now, if we move this up here and we put said girl here, this is directly under the casket, understanding that there is a what they call a shaft, right? A shaft, when you think of a well shaft, it's the hole all the way to the bottom. The shaft is the sides and the open area. Both collectively create a shaft, right? So when you think of a direct line here and a direct line here, everything being open except the four edges, that's the shaft, right? Now, what's interesting is that in a burial shaft, you have tight quarters and it's very constrictive, right? So what that means is that, and we're going to look at it two ways, because the information that's available is pertinent to two different options, right? Now, if she's directly under this, now also understanding that this is a non-gasketed casket, which means it is not airtight. It is not watertight. It has a lock. Don't tell me how I know. Don't ask me how I know. There's a lock that squeezes the bottom where you lay and the top that hinges over. It is not airtight. It is definitely not watertight. Okay? Gasketed would be just that. There's a gasket along the part you lay in, all the way around, all four sides. Then there'll be a gasket in the lid too. When the two touch, there's a key used at the end. Usually it's an Allen key in the end at the foot, and you twist that and it sucks the two together. This still would not be watertight. Okay? It would be airtight, but not watertight. Others have two latching mechanisms on the face where the handles would be. The handles are the apparatuses that lift up on each side that pallbearers use to move the casket, right? Now, in the event that she's buried directly under the casket, I think that you can see what's going to happen here. Now, there's not really a good gauge on what this line to this line. Well, we know that this is surface. This is all the time surface. We don't have an idea of what this depth is, right? So if we're imagining that at the bottom here is 6 feet, then it's 6 feet. Okay? Now, hang with me here. I'm going to move her out of the way. If we imagine that the surface is this line now, because we're talking about saturated soil, I'm not talking about 12 feet, I'm talking about this now being the surface line. This is the surface, but it's a different type of soil. So what that means is you can see that the conical shape, the conical shape is much more extreme at the top of the casket, right? Here, it's a wider V, which means that the spectrum is wider. Once you get here, it's much more extreme, right? So now let's put her here. This transmitted line and this reflective line do not go through the casket. They hit the surface of the casket and then are transmitted, they're reflected back. Does that make sense? Leaving everything underneath undiscovered. This does not shoot. Let me grab this really quick. Okay. Here is my. This does not shoot around the corner. This is conical and vertical. This is not shooting at radiuses. It does not shoot radius. Now, what I mean by a radius is radial dotted line. Let's take this here. It does not shoot in radius. It will not shoot in radius. There are anomalies where it could appear to shoot a radius. The readout, okay, the readout comes back as radial shaped, depending on the surface, right? So if this is a pipe, or this is a rock, or this is a shaft that's been dug, that's been filled back in, and it's tighter on this, it's more compacted here and less compacted here, you will get a disturbance that looks radial, right? You can see everything is radial. It does not emit or transmit a frequency that is radial. It is completely vertical in a conical shape. Okay? So what that means is anything below, let's move this over here. Anything below the casket goes undiscovered. It goes undiscovered. Now, we're going to go over here and read a little more. Schematic diagram of a GPR survey. Reflected waves penetrating the subsurface travel at different velocities based on the dielectric permittivity of the media in which they encounter. All subsurface anomalies, such as drainage pipes, are observed by the GPR. The progression of the survey is represented by dashed lines. Okay. Now, radar reflection occurs at interfaces with sufficient wave impedance contrast, and the amplitude of the reflected signal is dependent on the contrast magnitude. So they have a 10 hertz and they have a 20 hertz. 20 hertz, it permeates deeper. 10 hertz is for more shallow readings, right? Now, what we need to understand, let me go back here. Where are we at? A casket acts as a major obstruction that usually prevents ground penetrating radar from seeing anything directly underneath of it. Because a casket or its surrounding outer burial vault is dense. It didn't say it couldn't read through. It didn't say it can read through a casket, but not a casket that's in a concrete vault. It says a casket or a vault. So for our purposes here, we are removing the ideal of a vault because it doesn't matter vault or not. Follow me. It's dense, wide, and flat. It blocks or heavily reflects radars, creating a data shadow. Metal caskets, steel, bronze, copper caskets, act as a total radar shield. Metal reflects 100% of the GPR radio signal back to the surface, making it completely impossible for the radar waves to penetrate through the casket to image anything below it. Right? Exceptions and what GPR can detect instead. Historic or eco-burial wooden coffins decay and collapse over time, and the void fills with surrounding soil. In these specific cases, the radar waves can pass through the disturbed soil matrix, allowing GPR to map deeper layers, though image resolution will be heavily cluttered. This is in a decaying historic coffin, not a brand new one. Not a brand new coffin. That's wood. Okay. Even in the event that it's decayed, the dirt caves in, right? And it can see a disturbance. Nowhere in any of this description does it say you can see under it. While GPR cannot look vertically through a casket, an analyst can sometimes infer the presence of objects near or slightly under the edges by running a highly tight grid survey around the perimeter of the burial shaft. Let's go back here. What that means is by potentially making some sort of alteration, it might be able to see something like that. Now, you would have to, if you think about the dynamics of digging, to get a child who is, what was she, 3'6" and 30 pounds, right? Let me see here. You would have to dig into the side of the shaft, right? If you've ever been to a funeral and you look down in the hole, there's not even a foot on all sides. It's tight. You have just a little space, maybe 4 inches on each side, okay? The ideal for it being tight is when you fill it back in, that the ground would not settle crazy, right? So you would have to dig, let me see. I love Canva. I mean, I absolutely love Canva. Okay, let's take this, move it over here. Understanding, where's my other line? Here. The black line now represents what? The burial shaft, right? Let me move her out of the way. The burial shaft. And let's really zoom her down to kind of get a scale. So a casket is usually 6'7" or 6'8". So that would make it about roughly halfway. In order for her to be off to the side, you have to dig into this burial shaft to offset her to the edge. I think that what we understand is this, that for the path of least resistance, if she were there, right? We're speaking theoretically, that she would be buried like this. It says that the rays slightly go around the edges of caskets. They do not do this. It is not going to shoot in a line or in a radius under here to see what's under there. It does not do that. Right? So, long story short, GPR is not going to tell you if there's anything under the casket, right? Now, now we can start now we can start to shift spatially the depth, right? So what we'll do is, let me move the radius out of the way. Let's center it directly here. Okay. Burial shaft. Burial shaft. Potential remains. Okay. It doesn't matter on this plane if she's another 6 feet down. It doesn't matter, because this is not going to shoot a radius. It's not going to shoot a radius. Or it doesn't shoot a radius from the surface or once it gets in the dirt. No radius. Okay. It shoots vertically in a conical pattern. Okay. Now, I've discussed conical shapes anytime I've talked about Jody Sue's scream. Okay. When you understand that when it comes out of your mouth, it's tight. Once it gets out there like an echo, now it's in the cone and it's super wide. Once it gets out towards the end of the vocal transmission area, right? Imagine this is someone screaming. These lines are someone screaming. It's tight when it leaves your mouth. By the time it gets out there, it's spread out, right? So in this plane, it does not matter where she's buried, because what's going to happen is as soon as the transmitted frequency pulse hits the top of the casket, then it reflects. The reflective pulse goes straight back. You following me? Now, this happens very quick. If you can remember in the beginning, I said that the pulse is administered at a walking pace. So what you understand is that these are shooting fast. Pow, pow. As soon as it hits something, it's right back up. It's not taking a minute for it to go down and come back up, right? It's not. All of this is happening very quick. Boom, 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 boom. It's firing. Bang, 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 bang. Probably well past the speed of sight or sound, right? Well past that rate, right? So when we come back over here, unfortunately, in a graveyard, what you have to get in the ground is one of a couple of things. You have to have forensic data, camera, or I don't know, in some weird situation, an audio recording of someone actually burying something underneath of a casket, right? You'd have to see someone walk in holding something. They go jump down in a hole, and when they come back, they're not carrying the something. They're just carrying a shovel, right? You'd have to have that. Or you would have to have an eyewitness account, i.e., someone that witnessed it with their eye. Like 2 people go, put something in the bottom of a hole, and then one of the 2 persons, or in certain situations like a confession, maybe you would have both parties saying, with my eye, not with my ear, with my eye, I witnessed someone put something in the bottom of a burial shaft. Right? If you are an ear witness, which isn't even a thing, what they call that is hearsay. Hearsay does not meet the probable cause to even be brought up in court. That's why someone says, that's why in every court in the land you've heard objection, hearsay. And then you'll always hear after that sustained, which means we are not going to bring hearsay into official proceedings that require absolute proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Is everyone following me? Now, back to something I brought up on my community post yesterday or the day before. A comment was made. A comment was made on the fly, and I understand that there was a lot of comments going back and forth. But it was someone, he said, oh, the casket's airtight, so taking a cadaver dog would be pointless. A non-gasketed or non-sealer casket lacks a rubber seal between the lid and the base. Typically made of wood, it could be made of metal, cloth-covered materials, or inner 20-gauge steel. These caskets are more affordable and allow air and moisture to circulate, promoting a natural state of decomposition. Anytime there's decomposition and the receptacle is not gasketed, the gases escape. Now, from what I understand, which there wasn't a full context on, was that the funeral home gave them the casket, which happens a lot of times. Or even funeral homes may work with a family because there's always an upcharge on these services and these materials. What we don't know is if they were embalmed. Even with embalming, there's still a rate of decomposition. It is just slowed. It's abbreviated, right? So there's a lot of aspects going on, okay? What we understand is that a non-gasketed, now that's a big selling point, right? When you talk about it being gasketed, it is a peace of mind. What you're relaying to the customer is that this is as sealed as it could be, meaning that bugs, different things, water, moisture, dirt is not going to get in there with your loved one. That's what it's saying. Non-gasketed, as the identifier in the type of casket, suggests that it's not airtight. It's not watertight. It could be, it's not impervious, right? It's not impervious to insect activity to some degree, right? So I hope that everyone is following this here, right? So the moral of the story for today is ground penetrating radar is going to be absolutely useless to utilize as a tool to look under a solid obstruction. It is not going to work. There is no way, there's no way you're going to go on and find anything to suggest that this spectrum or this pulse is going to behave in a radius. It would defy physics, right? It would defy physics. This machine is not shooting curveballs into the soil. It's shooting a pulse that is taking the path of least resistance. The path of least resistance means at any point it meets an obstruction, it fires directly back to the machine, right? Now, this is a side cut, right? Now, let me do this really quick. Now, let's do this. This is a head-on profile, okay? This is looking at the casket from the head down, not a side diagram. This is looking at, this is, they're calling this the head. This is the head, This is the foot. It's looking at it down long ways, right? What you still have, depending on the soil, is this. This being the transmitted pulse, this being the reflective pulse. Okay? It does not change. It doesn't matter where something is at. It still is not going to do this. It's not going to shoot in a radius. It goes against the very physics of how pulse works. Pulse does not. Again, the readout will come back radial-like. It's because they're shooting down all the time. Boom, boom, boom. It's not shooting like this. It's shooting conical. It's shooting in a cone, right? When you can tell that's how fast this pulse is fired. It's fired boom, 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 boom. That naturally is going to give you a radius readout, right? It is not shooting in a radius. The output can come back like a radius, but you can see in this example, it's conical, right? The received the received pulse, the reflective pulse is still conical in the output, right? Now, in the event that you run into something, let's say, trying to find a readout of something that's flat. This is probably as close as we're going to get right here. For right now, anyways. You can see that things that are firing, there is still a conical shape. The conical shape is still there. But when it's flat, it's just flat, right? I don't know what kind of disturbance this is. This could be the change in soil. This could be a sandy loam. This could be a clay, red clay hard pack. I don't know. It could be an electrical line. Who knows? I don't know. But what you're seeing is, let's imagine this is the top of a casket, right? This data under here is inconsequential, right? Let's look at this one. This is probably so this is meters. I don't know what this is, but you can see as soon as it hits an obstruction, the material underneath of it doesn't have a readout, right? So I hope that this is making sense. To some of you, it will. Maybe to some of you, I'm not. Maybe to some of you, I'm not describing it in depth enough. But I'm giving you an idea of the research I've done and how the visual aids can interpret it, right? A GPR, unfortunately, is not the tool for this job. I wish it was, because I am not trying to disprove anyone's theory. But after researching, I feel like the people need to be informed. Like, it's just not going to work, right? And I think, let me start right off by saying that you run into two types of GPR operator. You run into the type that will take if you say, hey, can this GPR see underneath of a casket? A GPR operator with integrity would tell you, not so much, probably not. An unethical GPR operator, if you don't ask him, if you just say, hey, I want to go GPR in a cemetery, and if you don't specifically ask him, can this thing see around or through a casket? If you don't ask him, he's not going to tell you. He's there to get your money, right? An ethical business owner of any type, and you can apply that ethics to anywhere, like, I don't know, a farmer's market. If you ask the guy, well, were the tomatoes grown with a pesticide or not? An ethical farmer will say yes or no, right? This is the real world application for GPR. Okay. And I actually hate that it's not a tool that can be used right now. When you look at it in terms of the cemetery, let's go up. Let's pull it up here, because I think we can all kind of use our logical spidey senses. The ground in a cemetery, it's been dug up over and over and over and over, and it so there's the distinct plausibility that some portion of the burial shaft is not compacted like when you get down low. When you get down low, that's compacted because the ground above and the weight from it compacts it. As you get more weight above it, each foot you would go, and I'm just going by foot increments, it would go by the centimeter. Each centimeter you get lower, the weight from above is pushing down, compacting it, right? So you could say that the first couple feet of a shaft with the type of soil that is said to be in the Beach Creek area would be much easier to dig than, say, a saturated soil, a soil that contains a heavier ratio of water than not, right? Now, my point is that if you're on the surface, let's do this. If you're on the surface, should have probably did this in the beginning. This is the operator, okay? He's moving at fastest a walking pace, okay? A walking pace. There are caskets everywhere in here. Everywhere. There are all kinds of things. No, I shouldn't say things. There's all kinds of caskets everywhere. Now, I've been to cemeteries where, while digging a grave, they'll dig through what was at one time bricks from somewhere. They'll dig through a foot or two of bricks. There'll be bricks laying all in the dirt that's going to go back in the hole, right? If the area was ever used as a dump site 100 years ago, there could be all sorts of debris between the surface and the top of the casket, right? So as this guy's moving through here, there's many obstructions in the dirt, right? And I don't know the placing in that cemetery, but it's a small cemetery. They've been using it for a long time. Stands to reason that there's not 6 feet in between all of these areas, right? It stands to reason. I mean, we've all seen cemeteries, right? It stands to reason that they're all pretty tight, or on the different profile, not much room in between. So when you start to think about putting something somewhere, it becomes even what would appear to be a much more laborious task, or something that you're just like, yeah, no, that's not going to work, right? So I guess what I would do is I would entertain the idea, not me, but Ernie. I would definitely entertain the idea of calling, actually, it privately, calling the GPR operator or technician and lay out what you're trying to do. Now, you don't know if this is a wood deteriorated casket. You don't know if this is a metal casket. You don't know if these are in vaults. You have no idea, right? What you're looking for is one particular grave. Let's say this is Mr. Alec Morrison's grave here. Okay. You're looking for his particular grave. And you're looking for probably her being, if she were there theoretically, dead center of the grave. Because again, you are not going to dig into this. This is the burial shaft. You're not looking at a scenario where they dug into the side to shift her over, just so at some later point she could be found with a ground penetrating radar. If that were the case, when they put the casket in the ground with the lowering device, right? So the lowering device is a contraption that sits all the way around the grave. It's got two straps on either end. The pallbearers will place the casket on the straps. Then there's a wrench. They'll put it in it and they'll just start to spin it, and it lowers the casket down. Once it reaches the bottom, they slide the straps off, and then everyone kind of goes on their way, right? And then it's sort of a cultural thing. Some cultures will hang around and watch the whole field. Other cultures, as soon as it's down, everybody goes, and that they start tearing stuff down. And then the last thing they do is fill the hole because there's no onlookers, right? Does that make sense? So I think that we can use our logical mind and say that she's not offset. If she were offset when they looked in the hole, they'd say, hold on, something doesn't look right here. The side of this hole has been dug into, right? They always look in the hole every time. So that's what we're dealing with here. She's not offset. If she was there theoretically, she would not be offset. She would be to some degree in the center of the hole. This thing is not, it can slightly transmit under the edges. And it says by running a highly tight grid. What that would, in layman's terms, what that would mean is when you mow your grass, you overlap onto the one before. That would represent a tighter grid instead of you just running side by side, overlapping. That's a tighter grid. That's what, use your logical mind. To run a tighter grid, you would have to, in this line, you run a line that's clean. The next one on the way back, maybe you overlap halfway. Maybe you overlap the width of the wheel. Whatever it is, it overlaps. That's a tighter grid. It's the only way you can run a tighter grid. Okay? Now, happy-go-lucky. Let's keep it real. Theoretically, in the event that she was there, the only way they're going to know is by an eyewitness account or a confession. No one is ever going to, by hearsay or by someone relaying a dream. So somebody had a dream. They tell law enforcement. Law enforcement is not going to get a court order. You have to have a court order to exhume that casket and then dig below it. Does that make sense? It has to make sense because that's the way it works. It's the way it is, right? There's no permit. I think that even in the event that the family says, yeah, sure, we want to be helpful, there still is going to be things that have to be obtained to dig. One of those things is definitely going to be a search warrant. You would definitely have to have a search warrant to take even one shovel of dirt out after you take the casket out. You might be able to get someone to say, yeah, no, go ahead, peel him out of the ground, set him next to it, and do what you got to do. You might be able to do that, but they will not start digging to search for anything without a search warrant. That is not a permit. That is not something you can go down to the clerk's office and pay $35 for. That is only signed off by a judge, from a detective to a judge, right? Now, on the side of, DUI situation, yeah, no, you can refuse a breathalyzer, go to the jail. The cop that brought you to the jail, they have a systematic way that they contact a judge to get a breathalyzer or a search warrant to take your blood, a warrant to take your blood. Things have to be tightly controlled. Anytime there's something that could potentially be of evidentiary value, right? It has to be completely stringently oversighted by the chain of custody, which is a search warrant, right? What did Rand say? Yeah, the flute playing weirdo, David Dobson. Let me tell you this. There would definitely be a record in a crematorium. You don't just fire up. You don't fire up the oven. All of that stuff is supremely tracked, right? I mean, even down to the power bill, gas bill, right? They know theoretically with an average of what it takes each body to be cremated. You're not going to be able to, you have to have, there would have to be, theoretically, there would have to be permits. Now, that's not to say that you can't find some story online where someone did a clandestine cremation, right? But most crematoriums are completely camera filled too, right? Just to cut out even an accident, right? Like, oops, we accidentally cremated this one. Maybe we switched the remains. Maybe the paperwork wasn't right, or we put the wrong label on this box. We switched the labels up. Like, it is a super stringent, integrity filled kind of situation, right? So the ideal that David Dobson clandestine or illegally cremated her is nothing more than fodder. It's a moot point, right? There you go. It's a moot point. So there you have it. Well, not necessarily the death certificate you get later on down the road. What you get is you're getting authorization for the funeral home, right? The funeral home will have you sign a form for authorization to cremate, right? You can't just do it. You also have to think about what it would take for David Dobson to sneak her in there and make something happen, and then to turn a body from flesh to cremains. Doesn't happen like that, right? It's a 60 to 90 minute process, somewhere in that neighborhood, right? So now you've just got, once you put something in the furnace, now you've got 90 minutes you're standing around, and somebody can walk by, somebody can ask questions. you've got cameras everywhere. Like there's a lot. It would take a complete undertaking. There would have to be other people involved in making that happen. And then as soon as you start involving extra sets of eyes and a mouth, now you have a higher probability of somebody telling on you, right? Well, so someone that does cremains, someone that runs a crematory or is an assistant in a crematory, they have a very good judge of mass and volume, right? They know kind of what to expect. If you put a 180-pound woman or man in there, they kind of know what to expect when it comes back, right? Not only that, but there are bones that do not burn down to dust. So once cremation happens, the cremains are then put into different places, have different sizes or different types. But essentially what it would boil down to is it would be the larger bones, certain bones in the body. Pardon me. They have to be put into a blender, right? Or they're pulverized to dust. So someone would be able to tell, well, wait a minute, we've got an extra piece of femur bone here. We've got 2 extra pieces of femur bone. It would be very hard to say, wait, because they don't come out just dust, right? It comes out in fragments. So, yeah. Anyways, that's what the actuality is, right? I'm guessing that somebody probably is going to be on the hunt to find some other machine that shoots in a radius. You're not going to find one. They don't shoot in radiuses. They shoot in conical vertical lines, right? So, and I'm sure that has something to do with the platform or the transmitter on the machine, right? This is a very fair diagram of what it looks like. So you can kind of see, right? It's transmitted. There's a way that it's transmitted, but you can imagine that it's being shot down in the ground as he's walking, right? So it's transmitting from one portion of the machine and then reflected and data managed by another portion of the machine, right? There's a transmitter and then there's a transponder. I don't know. There's going to be 2 apparatuses, right? There's a transmitter and then there's whatever the name of the component that absorbs the reflective pulse, right? So yeah, it's just unfortunately ground penetrating radar is going to do nothing in this situation. I think that if it's a situation where someone may be trying to prove to the internet that it can be used there, I think the burden of proof would to actually hear, right, the white lady receipts, to have white lady receipts that an ethical operator thinks that he can find something under a casket, right, in a cemetery. You may be able to find an unethical, or you may be able to say that this person is an operator when maybe they're not, or absolutely not. But I think that the feat is going to be impossible to find a GPR operator that's going to say, yeah, I can find them underneath the casket, right? The fact of the matter is you're not going to find under the casket, right? You're just not. With all of the complications of not knowing what's in here, right? Could be all sorts of different debris in here. Maybe there's no debris, but with debris in the way, even shooting the top of this could could become kind of troublesome, right? Actually, and I want to say it this way because I'm going to say it this way because there's really no other way to say it. This would actually be the perfect scenario for someone that's trying to get rid of something. This would be the perfect scenario. Now, when I say perfect scenario, what I mean is in terms of using GPR. If you're, this would be a very low budget but witty way to hide something underneath of a casket that today's newest technology could not find, right? Now, that being said, hold on. I've heard someone say, I've heard Ernie say that after 5 years, there would be no decay. Here you have it, depending on the type of soil and the depth, so on and so forth. It could take a few months to several decades. So, and then what you have is the decay, the odor, the oils, because, you know, the body is got fat in it. Fat is an oil when you break it down, right? Those things are trapped in the soil. So to a cadaver dog, those things may be available to be detected for quite a long time. It says here the body can take up to 15 years to reach skeletonization and significantly longer to fully decompose due to limited oxygen and preserved environments. There you have it. So, I guess that's the gist of it, right? I absolutely, I absolutely, again, appeal to the idea that if you can get 400 people around, I'm not saying he can't. If you can get 400 people around, what I would say that's an even better situation than searching the cemetery, and that would be Laurel Run Park, because there was some very disturbing information that came from Cotton Simpson. That's, Cotton said she's in the Laurel Run Park, right? I think that is a much higher feasible deal, because with the dynamics of the GPR, this is going to be a very short-lived run here, right? This run is going to be very short, right? You're only going to be scanning the top or the length, right, of Mr. Thomas Alec Morrison's grave, right? You have no other reason to believe she could be under anything else. There was only one grave open at that time. So that would, not even theoretically, that would completely rule out the need to scan anything else. You're only scanning Mr. Alec's grave, Alec Morrison's, right? That is going to happen extremely quick. Then after that, and this is, in my opinion, if you find an unethical GPR operator, he's going to come and scan this. My opinion is an ethical scanner, he's going to walk through the complications of this with you. Now, I think that probably an ethical scanner, if you just absolutely insisted on having this scanned, he would probably take your money and come out and scan it. But if an ethical scanner says, listen, an ethical scanner, that the conversation would probably sound something like, listen, to shoot under a casket and try to find out if there's something, I'd just be taking your money. I'm going to be completely honest with you, right? But then leave you the exit sign where you're like, listen, but if you absolutely have to do it to rule out something in your own mind, we can do it. But the results are going to be, I can tell you what the results will be, right? So I guess that's kind of where it's at. Now, I'm kind of seeing another scenario, possibly, but this is such a long shot, it would be insane. So let's imagine, let's shrink this down. And on the pulse side, let's imagine that this thing can shoot around a pulse, right? And that she's dead center, because we understand you're not going to dig into the side of the shaft. That would alert anyone that would ever look in the hole. There's something going on right there, right? You'd never be able to put the hole back the way it was before you dug into the side of the grave, right? She would have to be so far down in there that I think that you still would not, somebody would be able to look at the bottom of the grave while they're setting up the lowering device and all the other jazz. Somebody would say, yeah, I've looked at hundreds of these. Something about this isn't right. Right? She would have to be so far down below it. I think that what we understand in the law of probability, right, is that it's probably just enough to cover it. If there's anything there, it would be just enough to have a layer where, you wouldn't see it. Somebody's not going to dig 6 foot down. I don't even think someone's going to dig 3 foot down. You're not trying, you don't have the same ease as digging a legal grave. You can kind of dig that at your own, Now, the other thing is if it was dug with a machine, a lot of you been to funerals. I don't know how many of you look down in the hole beforehand. When it's dug with a machine, the machine has teeth on the bucket. And when they rip down the side, it leaves teeth marks. When they dig up the bottom, it leaves teeth marks. So if it was hand dug, well, then quite naturally, there'll be boot tracks in the bottom because someone's standing down there digging and throwing the dirt out, right? If this was dug, and this would be a very important question to know, if this was dug with a machine, there will be no foot traffic marks in the bottom of the hole because everything is done above ground, right? So if someone dug it with a machine and then you look down in the hole and you see that the bottom is disturbed when it should just be constant machine marks. You see it on the edges. You don't see it on the long edge as much because they'll reach out and, for instance, they'll start at the foot and they'll dig this way. The long side just gets scraped. The machine never turns this way to dig. It digs everything from one way. So you have teeth marks here, you have teeth marks on the bottom, and you'll have teeth marks up the head side where they pull the bottom, grab the dirt, and pull it out. So there will be teeth marks on the head, the foot, and on the bottom. So, yeah, you would definitely, anybody that's ever done even just 2, if they're paying attention in life, they're like, whoa, yeah, this doesn't look right here, right? It doesn't look right. So that's what I have for you. GPR is a no-go here. It just isn't. You're going to have an eyewitness account, someone that witnessed them putting something in the hole with their eye, or on camera where someone walks in with a shovel and something over their shoulder, jumps down in a hole, and only leaves with a shovel, right? that those things, I'm 100% sure the police would already know if those things existed. Right? Anyways, that's all I got. Thank you for joining me, and I hope that it was informative. I think that at this point, really, I would sort of, I think I'll call Ryan and I'll say, hey, Ryan's dog now has done, it's certified, right? It's not as if Ryan bringing his dog at this point in time would contaminate anything, right? It's just going to bring the dog around and see if it smells anything, right? But there again, it's in a cemetery. So theoretically, throughout 100 years or however long that cemetery has been actively being used as a cemetery, you have varying levels of funeral work, right? What I mean by is you probably got people there that are buried that haven't been embalmed. You're going to have people there that were embalmed. You're going to have both types. And you know what I'm saying? It's going to be an environment rich to a dog with the smell on a cellular micro level. It's an environment that is rich in the smell of decomposition. So I think you take a cadaver dog there and it's going to hit immediately, not necessarily on any one thing. It may hit all over the place, right? It would be, I think, sort of a nightmare for a cadaver dog, actually, right? Anyways, I love all of y'all individually. What do we got over here? Sagittarius Archer, thank you for sending 10 jewels. I appreciate all of y'all individually. Remember, the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. Have a great day.